Happy Monday. Welcome to Bold Chats number 4. Today we have Martin McCain with us. It's such a pleasure to have you today. Brief introduction about myself and Brass Out Loud. So I am Rebecca Carew. I am one of the founders of Brass Out Loud. In addition to that, I am a French horn player in the New Jersey and New York City areas, as well as I have a blog called Mind Over Practice, which talks about musicians' health and artistic development. A little bit about Brass Out Loud. Melissa, Kate, and I joined together after multiple conversations regarding the lack of diversity and inclusion that we see in a lot of these workshops and seminars. So we decided that we wanted to kind of change the narrative a little bit. So basically, our mission is to highlight and elevate those who feel and are continue to be underrepresented in the brass community. So Melissa, did you want to introduce yourself today?
Yes, my name is Melissa Munoz. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's got their coffee and doing well. I am a trumpet player and educator currently based in Austin, Texas, not too far away from Mr. Martin McCain over here. And yeah, I'm super happy to be here this morning. Just going to give you all a faculty rundown of what we have here at Brass Out Loud, a workshop that's taking place January 8th through 10th. I'm going to go in score order because that's how we do it. So starting with trumpet, we have Rachel Samayoa, Jennifer Murata, Miss Kiku Collins, who we heard from just earlier. Oh, I guess that was Friday, last week. We have Billy Hunter, Chloe Rollins, Rodney Marsalis, Brianne Borden, Megan DeJarnett, and Miss Kate Amrine. Yay. And then moving on to horn, we got Alex Shuhan, Jeff Scott, Jeff Nelson, Miss Julie Landsman, and William Purvis. Ooh, and Rachel Jenkins. And under trombone, we have Nicole Abisi, John Rojak, Martin McCain, who's right here to the left of me, and Abby Conant. Finally, we got the low tuba euphonium people, Reggie Chapman, Carol Yonch, Chanel Kushlow, and Charles Villarubia. So that is so many awesome people. You guys do not want to miss this. For the very low price of $150, you're getting 3 days of really personal connections with all these incredible musicians. I'm going to be there. You should totally be there. And now on to Ms. Kate Amrine.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kate. I'm a trumpet player based in New York City. I'm also an educator, and I teach private students of all ages. As a freelancer, I do all sorts of different gigs, and I'm, in normal times, usually running around the city. I'm so excited about Brass Out Loud, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about our schedule. So hopefully you could tell from our faculty that we have a million things happening that are all awesome that you don't want to miss. So we have warm-up classes, we have performance master classes, we have a class on improvisation, a class on working with composers, a class on music entrepreneurship, and I'm probably forgetting something, but we also have 2 amazing panels that are going to be some really great discussions about the future of the music industry today and, looking to the future and how we can support female, trans, non-binary, and BIPOC individuals in music, and also combating racism and a bunch of other really important conversations that we should all be having. So I think it is now a good time to introduce our guest, Martin.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here today. If you don't know who Martin McCain is, everybody, then you need to get a phone or, I don't know, go to Google, figure yourself out, because Mr. McCain is a super highly regarded musician and bass trombonist, full-time professor at Texas State, dabbles in pretty much any kind of music you can think of, and we are so delighted to have him on faculty. And so to kick it off, I'm going to ask you, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started in the music world, and a little bit about who you are and your upbringing, all that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all for having me. This is so awesome that you guys are doing this. So kudos to you for taking on this initiative, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. I grew up in a musical family, and so music's always been a part of my life. And especially like growing up as a black young aspiring classical musician. I guess I never really thought that that was never for me because I grew up seeing my grandfather was award-winning concert organist, and so I saw him concertizing all over the country, playing Bach and being the face of organ brochures in the 80s. And so yeah, I mean, I just grew up around all types of music. When I started out in your band classes, I actually didn't start out on trombone. I started out on baritone. There was no trombone player in my beginning band class, but there was a trombone over in the corner, and I thought the instrument looked cool. There was no other instrument like it in the brass, with the slide and all. So I asked if I could switch to that, then just absolutely fell in love with it. In high school, I was very fortunate to be to have great teachers. Even though my parents didn't go into music, they were raised by musicians, and so they were very supportive, and they always wanted me to have the best teachers. So from starting in the seventh grade all the way through high school, I studied with the principal trombone of the Memphis Symphony Orchestra. Memphis is my hometown, and I had a lot of great opportunities in high school going to festivals like Brevard and Interlaken, and just being around other musicians that are my age. And so that was awesome, and I knew I wanted to go into music, and so I went to University of Southern Mississippi where I received my bachelor's, and that's actually where I switched to bass trombone my freshman year of college. Very interesting story because I didn't want to switch to bass at all. So when my undergrad professor was recruiting, she always wanted to recruit a trombone quartet for the incoming class, so 3 tenors and 1 bass. And the bass trombone player in my freshman class actually got in a really bad car accident the summer before, so he couldn't show up. Luckily, he survived and he was fine, but he just never came to school. So we still needed a bass, and it wasn't a quartet anymore. So she asked me if I was interested in switching, and I was like, no way. I enjoyed playing tenor. I didn't want to really delve into anything else. But then she convinced me that she would buy the studio a brand new Edwards bass trombone if I switched, and I was like, absolutely, I'll switch. I was playing on an older Bach at the time, so yeah, I switched, and to be honest with you, like that was probably the best decision ever. Like I was extremely hungry. I was listening to all the recordings and just loved the role of the bass trombone in all these different settings in orchestra and big band. Halfway through my undergraduate degree, I majored in performance, but I was also encouraged to actually pick up a minor in business, which was the best thing ever. The director of orchestral activities at the time, Dr. Jay Dean, at Southern Miss, I believe he's the director of the School of Music now. He was a huge marketer, especially for bringing in all these ridiculously amazing guest artists for a college in South Mississippi. And so some of those guest artists were like Yo-Yo Ma, Itzhak Perlin, Renee Fleming, and just the brochures for the orchestra were ridiculous, just crafted very well. And I remember when I was a work study student for the orchestra, he told me, if you're going to be a performance major, like you should really learn marketing skills and take business classes because no one's going to market you better than yourself. So, you should look into that. So I stayed in undergrad an extra year just so I could complete this minor, which was amazing. And he was definitely ahead of the time because it seems like now a lot of schools are talking about business, entrepreneurship, and all these things. And, he was ahead of the game like 20 years ago. And so after that, moved to Austin, Texas, and went to University of Texas Hook'em Horns, and did a master's degree there. Still thinking like I wanted to, just basically do like a orchestra track or play in a military band. But in Texas, you can really make a living teaching private lessons, and so like that was really paying my rent next to my assistantship. And I really enjoyed working with my students. Never really taught before, but yeah, I mean, I love helping people, and then I love music. So I mean, put two and two together, it's just what I love to do. And so, at the time too, I saw what my professor was doing, Dr. Nathaniel Brickens, and I'm like, man, I would love to do something like that, work with college students. And so that's when I decided to get a doctorate degree. And I was very fortunate. The first year of my doctorate degree, I got my first college teaching position, and really just the rest was history. After that, fast forward now, in my 11th year at Texas State University. And a lot of people always ask, where is that? It's in San Marcos, Texas, which is right in between Austin and San Antonio.
Yeah, it's just, oh, go ahead.
So you go first. You go first.
I was just saying it's a really awesome town too to live in.
Yeah.
I really like San Marcos.
Before we ask our next question, I just want to clarify, did you say the first year of your doctorate you got your job?
Yeah, like that.
Wow.
I was very fortunate, and
That's amazing.
that was actually a crazy transition too. So like my first job was at Houston-Tillotson University, which is a historically black college on the east side of Austin, and so I was literally going. I had my professor hat on, in the morning, and then I would drive under the interstate to be a student. And so just, going back and forth from teacher to student, that was definitely, I'm not gonna say it was a struggle, but it was just an interesting transition that first semester. And not to mention, like my position, I was an assistant professor, but also director of instrumental activities. I was charged for recruiting an entire instrumental program. So I was, creating a curriculum. I was teaching all kind of classes, like not just trombone. I didn't have just a trombone studio. Like I was teaching orchestration, theory, history, music appreciation, woodwind techniques. Like I was like grabbing onto my woodwind tech friends who were the teaching assistants at UT. I'm like, please give me all of your materials. And so yeah, it was just nice just having those resources and having my friends, like my woodwind friends, come and play for my students. But yeah. So I was very fortunate to be able to start off early.
That's so amazing. So this is kind of a funny transition. So you mentioned that you're also the youngest faculty member to hold the rank of full professor at Texas State. So obviously that's super incredible. And so I was sort of wondering like how you came to know that, and then how has your experience been at your newer job and just teaching in general at the college level?
Yeah, definitely. Well, like I said before, I started out really early. Like I was that cat who went straight through school. And first year of my doctorate, first year I was teaching, so like I was teaching college at 25 years old. I mean, there was a point where I had students that were older than me. And so when I was going up for promotion to full professor, which was 2 years ago, I was going to all the workshops where they're telling you like how to get your portfolio together. And one of my colleagues in the marketing department, she was very clear. She's like, we do not have full professors that are under 40 years old, and that just that doesn't happen. And I'm thinking, usually somebody would think in their head, oh my gosh, why am I here, why am I trying to go up? But in my head, like I knew I had more than enough stuff, so I'm like, oh, I'm about to make some things make some things happen that they're not aware of. And so and then also even in my school of music, the second youngest full professor probably has me by 15 years too. And so yeah, like that's just something I take great pride in, because I got I'm not ashamed to put my age out there. I'm not 40 years old yet. And yeah, just to be able to make that transition at a young age, I was very fortunate. But also, it was just the way things happened. So when I came to Texas State, I didn't go through the full 6 years of the tenure process, because I had other jobs previously, so I was able to have credit, and so I went up for tenure pretty early, like in 4 years.
That's amazing. I love when you're saying that they said, "Oh, this doesn't happen," and I feel like that's such a great line always. Is someone's like, "Oh, no one has ever done this," and it's like, "Great, I'm gonna do it." And so I love that whole challenge accepted attitude. It's so great to have now.
And also to answer your other question as far as just teaching in general, I mean, I love it. I think that's why I wanted to go into being a college professor anyway. So like when I was an undergrad, I my freshman year I was a ed major, because that's what all my all-state friends did. We all were ed majors. But after my freshman year, I went back to my old high school to help out. That's what normally people do, to go back. And I didn't enjoy that at all. I went back to, beginning of my sophomore year, my first lesson, I told my undergrad teacher, I don't want to do this. Like, I want to perform. And ideally, what I really wanted, I wanted to teach students who are serious, and I wanted to be able to be selective on the students that I could teach. Because there are some students out there that it's more of an extracurricular activity, and there's nothing wrong with that because we need those people that understand music because those are going to be our future patrons anyway. So nothing against that at all. But just for me, like I just wanted to put my energy into people who are really serious. And that's what I love about college teaching. I love teaching that particular age of student. Even working with freshmen and just helping them just develop life skills. It's not just trombone, but like showing up on time. Like learning how to craft your schedule. Like some people don't dig that, but actually I like molding individuals into the profession. And so yeah, that's what I love to do. And then not to mention the flexibility with my job is great because I currently I just teach lessons, some chamber coaching, a trombone choir, and I have the flexibility, well, when things are normal, to tour. And my school of music is very supportive of that too. Like they want me to be out there and performing. And so when you have that type of support too, that's always a great combination.
I think that's great. I mean, that's in a way like I can kind of relate a little bit. I went in as an education major my freshman year, and then they had very little horn players, and I was doing all the performing in every ensemble. And by the end, I was like, I just don't see myself teaching like a high school, like middle school, elementary age. I would see myself, performing, and then on the side teaching college, which is then exactly the path that I am now going down. It's like applying for DMA programs right now. So in that aspect, I don't know, I can relate really really well to your story there.
Yeah, and no shade against band directors or orchestra directors, their job is extremely difficult, and you have to think about the hours that they're putting in too, especially high school band directors. Especially I'm thinking Texas, when things are normal, the fall semester dealing with marching band competitions. I mean, it's a religion in Texas. And so, yeah, we need great educators because those great educators are going to be producing these amazing students, even if they don't go into the music field. And so, so you have to be a special person to do that. And so that's why, I always take great pride in like my music ed students too, because I want them to be the best musician possible so they can be the best teacher possible.
Exactly. I think that's great. So I guess the next question that I have for you kind of plays into this a little bit. And especially during like, the past few months, the past year has been a little bit difficult in terms of, how to adapt to different teaching methods and all of that. So could you tell us what it's like having been like a university professor during this time, and if you've had to adapt to different styles or methods of teaching?
Yeah, so I will say this: when things started to shut down, which was basically right after our spring break in March, we kind of had like two spring breaks. Um, for me and my students, like that transition, at least for where lessons were concerned, wasn't different at all. I mean, I was very fortunate that I've been teaching online for the last 6 years. And it was basically out of necessity. Like if I was out on tour or something, I mean, my students still need their lessons. And so, I was teaching them, it started with Skype and I started teaching Zoom maybe 4 years ago. And so, yeah, like it was just out of necessity. So when we had to do that transition, I mean, there was nothing for them. So I was very happy that they were used to that. Like even like a few weeks before the shutdown, like I had to fly to Utah to play with their orchestra, and it was like a last minute thing. So they were already ready to go. I'm like, oh, that's no problem. One thing that I do realize now, I think we all have realized, I was doing out of necessity, but now I was, with all like the fancy gear that's out there. Now I'm like, how was I doing this before? Like my lighting was awful. So like I had to go buy like lights and whatnot. microphones, like usually, I would be teaching either in a hotel or a coffee bar, so just headphones, laptop, and I'm like, man, I didn't have a microphone or anything, and so yeah, I definitely upped my technology game, that's for sure, and learning other outlets out there. Not sure if you guys are familiar with Clean Feed, but I use that with lessons. Just the sound is way better, but just little things, and that's the cool thing about um, really just music in general. We're always constantly learning, right? And so I dig that. Um, even not even just teaching, but just learning technology in general. I mean, when things start to shut down, people are asking to do like different recording projects, and I've been an Apple user, like MacBook Pro or iMac, since 2008. I didn't crack open GarageBand until this summer. And so just even learning how to navigate GarageBand, I'm like, wow, why didn't I use this before?
I was the exact same way. I had never used GarageBand. I thought I had deleted it actually from my computer. And then I realized that I had to start using it. And I was like, how do you use this program?
Yeah. So, I guess that's the silver lining with all of this. Yeah, just being able to, we've all kind of learned to be audio engineers and video engineers, which is basically, giving us a new skill to learn. And then also learning how to be creative too. I mean, at Texas State, we were not encouraged to have full studio, like in-person studio classes. And so, we've been doing studio classes via Zoom, and this has been a great opportunity to invite visiting artists, even like throughout the world, when traveling it's been pretty sparse. And, it's just been a great opportunity to have that one-on-one and just have the students to be able to uh, chat with many visiting artists. So even though we miss traveling and that in-person communication, like at least we're still able to do some things.
That's great. So I'm going to divert the conversation just a little bit. It looks like we have a question from our Facebook Live feed. This is from Chris Woods. He says, hello, everyone. It's nice to be here, and I'm loving all of the information and all of the inspiration for everything I'm doing. I'm honored to be here and to listen to all the advice and the stories. I'm currently trying to market myself for lessons and a presentation. Just curious, asking everyone, if you have one detrimental marketing tip, what would it be?
So when we're saying detrimental, like something not to do at all, or just advice, like what should?
Maybe if you could offer both.
Okay. Well, maybe some things not to do. I would say that's a very good question. Some people don't care for, I guess, like the spammy type of emails or presentation. If you have like a newsletter like on your website or whatnot, I think it's always important to actually solicit emails instead of just like, oh, I found this person's email on a certain email list and I'm just going to spam them. That can be kind of a turn off sometimes. So I think just asking for for that approval is always good. Now, as far as just marketing yourself, I think we're in the day and age of presentation, and so I mean, if your packaging looks great, and that's one thing I want to say to you guys too, like your presentation, like your graphics, arts looks amazing. So you got to think like this: our attention span, especially if you're on social media and you're just scrolling, is not that quick, right? And so if it's like a really great graphic, it needs to be able to catch the person's attention where you want to stop. Like, oh, let me check this out. This like might be interesting. And so like presentation is huge, not just for teaching private lessons or wanting to build a studio, but just in general. And then also, I would say um, utilizing your network. And so, if you know that you have friends who are teachers that are looking for private students, I would reach out to them first because they are the ones that have all the students already, like the all the directors, the band directors, orchestra directors. That's a good way of going about it and just kind of getting out feelers. And once you have those feelers, then that can become a snowball effect, and it just goes from there. And I feel like I do that a lot with my students because, like I said before, Texas, I mean, it is a culture to teach private lessons, and so, but it can be kind of hard to get into that market, especially if you've just moved to Texas and you don't know anyone, and so, yeah, just making those proper connections is always important. I hope I answered that question. Okay.
You did, totally. Before I have to run, I want to ask my question. So from your solo albums to your experiences as a sideman in jazz and playing Broadway tours, you obviously have such an amazing, diverse experience as a performer. And so I'm wondering, how do you suggest young musicians to cultivate these skills to be successful in multiple genres and areas?
I would say to play everything. Like when I was in high school, like, I was in a youth orchestra. I loved doing that. There was no jazz band at my high school, so I didn't, have big band experience yet. But I remember my dad. He told me, if you don't want to be hungry, like you should know how to play everything. And like I said, he wasn't a musician, but he played clarinet, and he grew up around some fantastic musicians like Leon Bates, the great concert pianist. Like he went to high school with him, so he and his mom was a pianist too. So like he knew what he was talking about. So when I went to college, I played in everything and grad school, not just orchestra and the bands, but if there was an opportunity to play in a pit show for the theater department, I took advantage of doing that. I played in salsa bands, and the cool thing was that helped the trajectory of my career. And so I don't really do this now, but when I moved to Texas, and salsa band is a huge thing. Like I played in a professional salsa band up like Central Texas in Killeen that paid very well. Like we had weekly gigs, and when I was in school, in grad school, 3 days out of the week, like I was in 5 hours of rehearsals. Like from 12 to 2, I was in orchestra or wind ensemble. From 2 to 3, my quartet was getting coached. From 3 to 5, I had big band rehearsal. So I had to wear 3 different hats, within 5 hours. And I felt like that definitely helped my career. Where now, like if I have to play a matinee show with orchestra and then play a big band show later on that night, like that transition is not as bad. So they definitely play everything in school. For my students that are very like orchestral focused, I tell them to play in big band. Like I wasn't getting called to play with, some orchestras to play Brahms initially. It was because I could play, a pops concert. I knew how to, fit in a section and swing. And so, like, never say that I don't want to do that because, I don't want to turn down money either. And then also, especially for low brass players, trombone players, take up doubling as well. With a lot of these Broadway shows that come through the national touring shows, there's sometimes where I have to play tenor, trombone, bass trombone, and tuba all in one book. And I just think that I was taking my doubling seriously. They kind of help out for things like that.
Wow, that is some strong chops. 5 hours of rehearsal
Yeah,
straight. That's
yeah, yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, you went to UT, so I mean, talking about, but yeah, like that was like the schedule, and really like the schedule I had for like 3 out of the 4 years that I was in school there. So, but yeah, that definitely builds your chops too. That's for sure when you're in 5 hours of rehearsals.
hmm Yeah, that's great advice because I definitely feel like, I mean, I didn't play in a lot of ensembles other than the one ensemble really when I was at UT. Um, but I wish that I had gotten that advice at the time so that I could have expanded my horizons a little bit and played more in the area. So that's awesome. Um, So speaking of strong chops, can you tell us a little bit about your mouthpiece line with Pickett?
Yeah, definitely. Peter is fantastic. I met him on a Kentucky tour. I was just, doing some residencies at various, universities there, and a buddy of mine, Brad Kearns, who's the trombone professor at University of Kentucky in Lexington, introduced me to Peter. That's where Pickett Brass is based out of. And at the time, I mean, Peter's famous in the trumpet world. Like, I never heard of Pickett Brass mouthpieces. And he was starting to delve into the trombone mouthpiece line. And, we met, went over to the shop, saw all of his cool gadgets and everything. And, he offered to make a mouthpiece for me. And so I'm like, sure, like that would be amazing. And the mouthpiece, the first prototype he sent, I loved. And then we just started to work on developing this one mouthpiece. And then 2 years later, we decided to create an entire line, mainly with the bass trombone player in mind. So especially when it comes to doubling, because I feel when it comes to doubling, the mouthpiece is really important. And the reason why when I was younger I turned so many tenor trombone gigs away is because I just didn't have the right mouthpiece that felt great like on my face. So like the mouthpiece that we created tenor trombone wise is like a bass trombone player's mouthpiece. So similar rim, but the cup is similar to like a deeper tenor trombone rim. And then we created a tuba mouthpiece because in the role of bass trombone players who play big band music or some studio work or the Broadway touring scene, that is a thing. Like usually, like a bass trombone book, you have to double tuba, and so I wanted to create a mouthpiece that was a good transition between bass trombone and tuba, like for those type of gigs. And then we also created a contra-bass trombone mouthpiece too, and like I love playing contra when I get the opportunity. And now I found that there was not that many contra mouthpieces out there, and he was really interested in creating something like that too. And what I love about working with Peter is going up to Lexington, and we it's always ever evolving. So like if I say like, can we tweak something like this in the throat? He's down for doing things like that. And so yeah, like we're still in production right now, like trying to create newer things. So what's on the line right now? Like it could change, a year from now.
That's super interesting. As a trumpet player, I don't know anything about that, but I imagine that switching between tenor trombone and bass trombone is not easy. It just maybe it's similar to piccolo trumpet and regular trumpet, but maybe not. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So that's really cool that y'all are working on that mouthpiece line together. And I feel like now is a good moment to add that Mr. Martin McCain is a Shires artist, and Shires is sponsoring Brass Out Loud. So thank you very much for that. We have also Yamaha as a sponsor. So thank you all so much. And yeah, Kate, not Kate, Rebecca, do you want to ask your next question?
Sure. So Martin, kind of getting into your advice and opinions about some things. What's a piece of advice that you could offer to young musicians, especially those who are underrepresented brass players today, both navigating during COVID and normal times?
Definitely. I would say I think mentorship is important, and I feel that all of us would not be where we are unless we had a great mentor. And so, with the times of COVID, I think this is the perfect opportunity just to reach out to people, even if it's a mentor that you didn't necessarily study with during your training. I mean, I feel like, we have all this access to many different people. So this is like the perfect opportunity just to reach out to different people that you look up to and you inspire, and don't be afraid to do it. I mean, when I remember even like the when I was that hungry freshman in college, I reached out to people all the time, like via email. And no one told me to do that. I was just curious, and I was curious about repertoire and different, techniques. And it's funny because then those same people, remember you like when you become a professional, and like that's like a really really cool feeling. And so, reaching out to mentors is a big thing, and just being very curious, and don't be afraid to reach out. Um, I would say that once you get you reach out to your heroes, you find out that they're human beings, as well, and like they're nice people, and so and that's that's we're brass players. I mean, we're just known for being nice anyway, and we love a good hang, and so yeah, like that's huge. I'm very fortunate that I had great mentors, and really like a diverse set of mentors, as well. I mean, I can say that like my trombone teacher, 7th through 12th grade, was a white male. My undergrad trombone professor was a female. And then my graduate school trombone professor was a black male. So I had a very unique, opportunity to have a diverse set of, teachers.
That's awesome. And I think that sometimes that's what people, I wouldn't say people look for, but I think that sometimes, even with like teaching faculty, there's not enough diversity. I know that that's a conversation that I had with a couple of people, back maybe like a year or two ago. I remember being at a festival and, someone was like, like there's a lot of white male French horn teachers, frankly. And, they're like, I was talking to, I can't remember who I was talking to. I think two of my friends that I went to the Amani Winds Festival with. And I studied with Jeff Scott, who, I'm so fortunate for. I mean, he, for example, is my mentor. He's had my back throughout, the past 6 years that I've known him. And he, incredible player, incredible person. He's so dedicated to like everything that he does. And I definitely like, I get that because some people I think look for, they're like, like, why is it the same? Like, where's the diversity? And, for some people, that's super important, especially in an educational setting. You want to be able to, like, I know Melissa's mentioned this a couple of times, like that she's like, where are the people who look like me that I look up to? And it's one of those things that this is part of why Brass Out Loud exists to, spread more awareness and, say, here are these people that, we're not always seeing like in like the spotlight or whatever. But they're here and they're relevant and they're just as, special and, you know, amazing as anybody else that, who we see constantly in that light. So I think that that's some really great advice.
Yeah, that's very, profound what you said, Rebecca. And the crazy thing is, when I was in college, I didn't think about those things at all. When I was like going to all these different festivals and workshops, I didn't think about it. And I don't know, like maybe that was the trend, and we were conditioned to think that way. And so it's amazing that you guys are, basically taking the bull by the horns, and it's like, we're gonna do our part to change that. And I mean, I've gotten to the point, my career, I don't, I'll call people out. It doesn't matter, because it is true. Like when you're like starting to look at these flyers and you're starting to see the same, situation, the same complex. Yeah, there's something that's definitely wrong with that picture, and it's just good that now, especially like the younger generation is doing something about that too. And then I just hope that that becomes a trend for, future, organizations, like all organizations, not just brass, but, especially, I mean, God forbid, the string world and the piano world.
I completely agree. So Martin, well, I guess two things. If anybody on Facebook has any more questions for Martin, now would be the time to drop them in the chat. And Martin, our last question, from Brass Out Loud to you. This is something that we've been asking a lot of our guests and faculty and even just friends. What is what is the future of brass to you? What is your ideal brass community look like?
My ideal brass community is definitely just looking at the poster that you guys created. Like, with all of your guest artists, that is the ideal brass community. Just seeing um, when I'm showing up to anything like an orchestra performance, and I'm not the only like black musician on the stage. Just seeing just a whole rainbow of different colors like on stage or in the pit. That's very important, and it should be representative of the world. Right? Not just America, but just the world. I remember I did one Broadway touring show, and the conductor happened to be black, and he said, "Wow, like we're doing actually a like the touring show was Motown, and said like this is mainly a black cast, but there's only one black musician in the pit. Like there's something wrong with that." And so yeah, that's like my ideal brass community, where that we just have representation everywhere. And I feel like if we continue to have these initiatives, these conversations, and a lot of these are uncomfortable conversations, but they need to be had, then we're actually going to be going somewhere. But I feel like these conversations really just started, at least publicly, this past summer. And I always tell people like this is not a moment, this is a movement. All right, like we don't want just to talk about this and say, oh, we met our quota. No, like this needs to continue in the future as well. And sorry, I can just rant on this because it's something I'm just very passionate about. But yeah, that's very important. And thank you guys again for doing this.
Thank you so much for that. That was beautiful. I totally agree with you. Um, well, if there are no other questions on the chat, I will just give a little wrap up. If you would like to hear more from Mr. Martin McCain, please check out our website, brassoutloud.com. He'll be giving a trombone performance masterclass on Friday, January the 8th, and it's going to be amazing. Register now. We're so lucky to have you here today. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you again, Martin. And quickly with the wrap up, if you're interested in registering, you can register now at our website, www.brassoutloud.com. Stay tuned. We will be having a Cyber Monday deal. So just, be on the lookout for that a week from today. And in addition to that, our Kickstarter is still up. It is live until December 14th. So if you're interested in registering, you can check that out now. You could wait until Cyber Monday. That would be a great deal. And again, you'll be seeing Mr. Martin McCain on our faculty on January 8th. So don't miss it. I hope everybody has a great Monday and a great rest of your week. And we will see you on Saturday.